Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start this Gittin daf Mem Beis. We're going to begin on Mem Beis Mem Aleph by the top line. So we were learning regarding someone who is an Eved, half an Eved and half Ben Chorin. So the Mishnah does mention that that's a possibility. However, we end up saying it's because it's Shnei Shutvan Divrei Kol. That's specifically because there's two partners. One of them freed them, the other one didn't, and therefore he's considered to be half free and half slave. We were discussing whether if you're the only owner, whether or not you had the ability to do that. We mentioned whether it works with a shtar, with kesef, and now the Gemara continues. Omer Rabba, machlokes, this whole machlokes of whether or not a single owner is able to free part of his eved is only b'shishach chetzio heniach chetzio, where he only freed half of him. However, the other half he kept for himself. Only there do we find this machlokas Rabbi and the Rabbanan. It says Rashi, debi'inan denipekuli minei ki'isha, that it's necessary possibly that he has to be completely free, completely, just like a woman. However, avol shicher chetzia, let's say he does free half. However, umacher chetzia, o nasen b'matana chetzia, he relinquishes everything, which is called lekashir. There, he surrenders his incomplete ownership, but he doesn't make him free. Instead, he says half of him is free, and the other half is going to be a matana, is going to be a gift, or I'm selling the other half. So hivan de kanapik mine kule, since he completely left his rishos, divrei kol kana. Everyone holds that actually it is a kinyan. So Amalei Abaye. So this was Rabba's opinion. On this, Abaye says, Uvakuhu pligi. Are you telling me when he totally releases and surrenders his ownership, there's no machlokas? But we learned in one place that a kaisev dechasav l'shnei avadav. A person had two documents, two shtaros, and he wrote to each of his slaves. So kanu u'meshachrin zed zed. So they're kaina, and they are able to free one another. Okay. So what is this referring to? Says Rashi, Shikasav shnei shtaros kol nechasav lozeh. You wrote two documents, all your possessions to this slave, the kol nechasav lozeh, and all the possessions to another one. B'zicha l'shliach echad b'vas achas was done b'vas achas shneihem simultaneously. The palgi. Not one of them came before the other. This was done at the same moment. So this, Rashi says, so since each one was zoicha to the other half, so therefore they could free each other. All my possessions are given over to Ploni. Uploini avodai, to my two avodim. They're not even kind of themselves. So my love, ha Rabbi or Rabbanan. L'chayro, we must be saying that this is a machlokas Rabbi Rabbanan. Even when he's being completely freed, he still argues. Says Rashi, Kol nechasav ploni abdi. All my possessions are going to go to my eved. Umaydu Rabbanan kivan dezich lehem b'vas achas. Since it was done at the same time, V'nafki kul minei kanu, and it was completely relinquished. His ownership is a kinyan. However, uvasraisa di omer chatzi b'shtar echad. So we're going to end up saying that maybe the second brisa, half of you is with one shtar. Kasav chatzi nechasi loch. I wrote half of my possessions to you. V'chein b'shin lechaver lafika chul kanu dehabli b'chol echad shicher chetzio v'hiniach chetzio. So each of these cases, one was freed, only half and not the whole thing. So look, idi v'idi rabbanim, hadiyar merkul, hadiyar merchatzi chatzi. It depends on the language. If you say kul, it works. If you say like kol nechasei l'ploni avdi, then it works. However, in this case, the second statement is you said chatzi, half of you, and therefore it doesn't work. It already says that case. That if you say half, that it's not a king, so the ratio of the armor cool. Must be the ratio of this brayso is talking about where he said, all of you. So Perushika Mafarish. So as the Gemara often explains, it says, oh, it's coming to explain the ratio. Af atzmul kanu ketzad. What is the case where the Eved is not even cut himself? Going dermachatzi. So this is also logical that this is the situation. If you want to tell me the ratio, he's talking about where he said that in the entirety of the Eved. So hashta omer kuhu kanu. If even in that case, we're saying it's not a kinyan, so the fact that it says chatzi, obviously it's not going to work. So the fact is, it must be that there would be no chiddush to mention it. So it must be that the ratio is also talking about chatzi, and this has come to explain. Versus no. Area. That's not necessarily a raya. Tana sefer guli ratio. The sefer may become to explain the ratio. You shouldn't think, and this is in Kedushin elsewhere by Derek Gervataishan, this logic, you shouldn't think, which this is actually the case, that ratio of Amar Kulu Kanu. However, if you would say Kulu, then it would work. Tana sefer the Amar Machal the ratio the Amar Kulu v'hil Kanu. So again, it's not necessarily a raya, muchrachas, clear, but nonetheless, it is possible that that's how we answer it, and it's not based on the Machlokes Rebbe and Rabban. Depends if we're dealing with one star or multiple stars. So you're trying to do this to both slaves with one star, says Rashi, lo kanu, it doesn't work. Kigon kol nechase leploni ploni abdi. Dechsiv la v'lo lo chaverta. Ein shtei nashim miskereshes b'get echad. You can't divorce two women with one get. Ve'ein shnei avadim mishtachar b'get echad. You can't free two avadim with one document. So therefore, just as a practicality, maybe the reason why they weren't cutting themselves is because it was one star. Whereas this 1 second. So if you tell me the case where it does work is mishtei shtaros, mishtar echad ma'yuri chatzi v'loimer kol nami ulkanu. What's the difference? The fact that you used one star, that shouldn't work anyway. You're right. The fact that you'd use one star doesn't make any difference. If we said kul or you said chatzi, either way it will not work. Hachinami, kaimer, af atzman kanu. That's what it means. They're not even cutting themselves. B'medibar murim b'shtar echad. That's only if they wrote one star. However, v'shtei shtaros kanu. However, if they had separate documents, it works. However, if they would have said chatzi, half of you, so then it doesn't work at all, even if there were two separate stars. Maybe the difference is when it happened. Maybe it was b'vasachas, says that you wanted to do this to both of them at the same time. V'tirvayu, says Rashi, b'd'omer kuhu, and by both of you said all of my possessions. V'adetani kanu shemasir shnei ashtaros b'vasachas. V'adetani lo kanu b'zachazet. So if it's b'zachazet, it doesn't work. So b'shlom abasra lo kanu 1 second. I understand the second slave, it doesn't work because it was b'zachazet, so everything was given to the first guy. So dehakani le kama, because the first slave got it. So hel kama likni nashi likni lechavre. Why don't we say that the first Eved does go free and acquire the other guy? Since you wrote Kol, so the first slave should acquire himself. So you're right. We have to answer it like we said before. Okay. Ravashi Aimer Shani Hasam. It's different over there. He's trying to support the third answer and not say it's an unacceptable answer. Hasam de Kakarluhu Avodai. Over there, he called him Avodai. Says Rashi, Bishtar Gufe, Diktani Kono Chasam Laponi Avodai, Shmamina Lo Shacharinhu. He didn't want to free them, because otherwise he wouldn't have called him Avodai. So that in itself shows that he didn't want to free him. Maybe it just means that he was a slave, only that he was a slave, but not calling him a slave now. Mil Tanan, after we learn, you write all your possessions to your Eved. Yotzal Cheres, he goes free. Shir Karka Koshahu, if you left over a little bit of land, Lo Yotzal Cheres, in that situation, he will not go free. Why? It says Rashi, Delo Yadinan, because since he didn't specify, and he left over some land, we don't know, hey Karka Shir, what land he left over. Uvachol Kol, Shehu Amrinan Hai Shir, that was maybe what he left over. Kivan de Karkos Lukana Lugufinam Lukana. Since he's not kind of the land, he's also not going to be kind himself. Why? Deloy Palginan Dibura. Because we don't split up the words. Hoyel v'chad Dibura achnile gufin achasim v'palga Dibura lo iskayim idach palga namulam iskayim. So it doesn't work. Okay. So that is, again, if you're Shir Karka Koshahu, he doesn't go free. Lo yatzal cheres. If Shimon Oimer Oilam hu ben Chayr, and he goes free ad Shiyamer Kol Chasin Esinul Ploini Abdi, everything's given over to my Eved Chutz Me'echad Me'irbuah Shebehen, except for 1 myriad, 1/10,000. Time Adiyar Mechutz Me'echad Me'irbuah Shebehen. The reason why he specifically said that, and Rashi says, Kivandul Pira Shiura Amrinan Hainu Ihu Dishare. This is what he left over. Ludidei Lo Chashavle El Echad Me'irbuah. Okay, so then he would be kind himself. Amai for Evid Kakarle, he called him a slave. El Avdi Shayu Kfar, Hakanami Avade Shayu Kfar. So the fact that it says slave in it, it doesn't mean he's calling him a slave now, he's on him freed. It's just calling him because that's what he was known as for so many years. Okay, Nochul Shor. What happens, and this Rashi says, Amasnisim Koi, this is going back to our Mishnah, Misha Chetziv Evan, someone who's half free, half a slave, so and he gets, an ox gores him, and there's damages, so Yom Shel Rabo or Rabo. If the, let's finish this up, Yom Shel Atzmo Atzmo, says Rashi, Im B'Yom Shel Rabo, Nachli. Let's say the ox gored the Eved on the day he was supposed to be doing Avdos, B'chavol boy, Piches dam of a rabbi. So that difference goes to the other master. Shor Mishalim Nezek Dahainu Pchas Domim. He has to pay the full damages. However, if it was the other day, every other day, they're switching off, at least according to the Mishnah Rishayna, so Yom Shel Atzmo Atzmo. If he got gored on that first day, so he gets the money, the Eved does. El Biata Yom Shel Rabbi Yisa Shilcha Yom Shel Atzma Yisa Bas Chayrin. That doesn't make any sense, right? We know that he's not allowed to do that, and the Mishnah Rishayna was the whole question. But what, on the first day, on one day when he's connected to his Rebbe, to the master, he can be with a Shivcha, and then the next day, because he's for himself, he can be with Bas Chayrin? Obviously not. How do you split them? Where it says no, Isir lo Kamrinan. We're not talking about Isser. So obviously you're right. When it comes to Isser, he can't be with either of them. But we could split Mumli. Tashma. Hamas, let's say an ox who is a mu'id, says Rashi, B'shor ha-mu'id koi, and it kills this guy who's mi shechetzi avev v'chetzi ben chayrin. So he's partially free, and he was killed. So says Rashi, B'shor ha-mu'id koi, the gabi even noisin shleishim kesef, danu kanas. There's the din kanas of 30 kesef that is given. They feel enu shava dinner, even if the guy isn't really worth that much on the market, nonetheless nice and shleishim sela. It's a knas. It's always the same amount, no matter who it was that was killed. Megabi ben chayrin nice and kaifer dahainu demei haharu. However, when it comes to someone who's free, so you pay, he has to pay kaifer. There's actually more machlokas and makos whether it's his value or the one who was killed. So the question Gemara asks is, what do you do with this knas? So noisin chatzi knas l'rabo. You split it. Half of it goes to the master because he's half a slave. It says Gemara in Membez and Membez. The chatzi kaiful yarshav, and because he died, so now the other half of the kaifer will go to the slave's heirs. Okay, and fine. So amai. Hachinami, what we say, Lema Yom Shel Rabo Rabo, Yom Shel Atzmo Atzmo. Why don't we just say it all depends on what day he was killed? Right? So Shani Hacha the Kakalya Karna. In this situation, the Karen is basically completed. Namely, the problem is that he's now dead, and therefore he can no longer serve the for his master for half the time. So therefore, because of that, we're not going to say, oh, it all depends on what day he died, but rather it's split down the middle, half and half. So what would be a case where it's not Kali Karna, that it's not finished? He got hit on the hand. So says Rashi, so his hand got yavsha, dried up because of the hit. The seifel aksar, and then it went back to its normal way. V'shamin and lay, says Rashi, we evaluate kama davam pchusim bekach, how much was he less limchor achshav shuk, to be sold in the marketplace. V'im yom shel rabo hoya, if it was the day he got hit on the hand on the day of his master, Yedasan hakol rabo, everything goes to him. V'im yom shel atzmo hoya hakol atzmo. So in this situation, because it's not a case of Kali Karna, this notion is that he got hurt, but he's going to be healed. So then, in that situation, it is totally on who was the owner, if you will, at the time of that hit. Okay. So anicha by diarmin nice lo sheves gedaya v'sheves katana shaper. It's good according to him who says that you have to give sheves gedaya. Says Rashi, hein pchas damav. It's the deduction of the value. We machar achshav ashuk, which is who nezek. So sheves gedayel is referring to the nezek, the damages, and also nezek sheves katana, says Rashi, had a ki'ilu hu shaimer kishuin. It's as though he was like guarding cucumbers. Shenoisen lo kol yemei chelyai sheyishka b'mita machmos chayli. He was in his bed doing this. Sheinu yochel lishmer kishuim. Now, unfortunately, he was not able to be a guard. So that's what Sheves Katan is. Just a person who's able to work watching cucumbers. So according to this, it says that Sheves Gadon, Sheves Katana is given. El Rava di Omer Eno Naisano El Shivtai. He only gets the shivtai, so let's say shopper. Why? It says Rashi Kivan do Kali Karno Gamri, since it's not completely finished. Yom Shel Rabo, Yom Shel Atzmo Atzmo. However, according to the other opinion that says Rabbi Ella Shivto, you only get the amount of days of rest, Shabachol Yom Yom of every day. So Hai Shorhu Vishor In Shalom El Nezek. Says Rashi, Yitin Schar Adam Shalom if you Malacha Shay Ragoba. So by a shore, there's only nezek. So only if the sheves is part of the nezek, otherwise we would have this problem. Meretzus iboy seima kishiko adam. He got hit by a person. So what? So hadiamrina el yom shel rabo, where it goes to the master, is only when he got hit by a person. Iboy seima memrahi umemra rava lo. Says Rashi, oil b'shore. It was actually the shore that harmed him. Ukabai di'amer shach bandin nezek. Memra ba'almahi ve'enu lo mishnah v'braisa. It's a memra. It's not a mishnah braisa. Memra rava oimer loch daha memra lo svirle. Okay. Remember, rava lo svirle doesn't hold of us. Iboilu. It's fact the Gemara. Ma'ukav get shichur. If let's say an Eved is lacking this document, says Rashi, Mechusar get shichur, of going free. Kol hanat termina behu di yatzal cheres. All that what she said about going free. Then the Rabbi Alehen Ela Shesrichin get shichur kagun makdish u mafkir. When the situation you're makdish, you made ownerless the Eved. Mish shechetzu ben charin the tnan kaifinus rabbi. So we ask the question, Mu'ukav get shichur if the Eved is lacking this document. Yeshul kanas or enul kanas. Does the kanas go to the Rav, to the master, or does it not? Keser shloishim shkolim yitin la'adainav amrachmana. It says the 30 shekel go to the master. V'hai lav adanhu. He's really not considered to be his master anymore because he was mafkir the Eved. So yeah, he's supposed to give a document of shichur, but he was already mafkir him, so he's not really his master anymore. So maybe he shouldn't get the money. Well, dilma kivan the mechoser get shichur adan krin bay. The reality is, even if he was mafkir him or he was makdish him, he's still considered yours because you didn't give the document yet. So Tashma, Hamis of an ox kills. So half of it goes to the master. The other half goes to the Eved who died, his relatives. So my love, Commissioner Achrayna. Well, it's like the Mishnah Achrayna, says Rashi. Well, after his Hillel ended up agreeing to paskin like Beis Shammai that we're going to force the second half. The one guy, there's partners. One guy freed him, the other one didn't. So we're going to force the second guy to free him. Nonetheless, shakal knas l'tzad avdos. We're still going to allow this guy to get the knas. Kol zman shelo nichtav haget. So maybe this is a raya that even though we're going to have forced him to go free, but nonetheless, since a get shichur was not yet written, so therefore the din is that the kanas will still go to the master. Where it says lo, Commissioner Shaina, we're talking about the Mishnah Shaina. We're talking about a situation where Beis Hillel at this time did not force, says Rashi, delaysly kaifin. There was no din of forcing, but other than Gamahu, it's just his regular. He was his master. So therefore, of course, it's going to go to him in that situation. But if he would have freed him, been mafker him, been makdish him, so then who knows whether or not he'll actually get the kanas. Tashma hipul eshina. Let's say the Rav knocked out the Eved Kanani's tooth. That was one. Vesimias Einai. Then afterwards, he blinded him. So we know that an Eved goes free, Shin B'ayin, if you knock out his tooth or his eye. So therefore, the second that you knocked out his tooth, now he's free. And now that you blinded him, you blinded a free man. So Yoitza B'shinov, he goes out with the tooth, B'noisin D'me'aino. And you have to pay him because this was a second act. So you have to pay him for that damage. Navi Amr Yeshul Kanas. If you want to tell me that the Rav gets Kanas or Kanas L'Rabbi, Hashda Chava Be'achrine Yoiv Le'Rabbi. When it comes to someone else hitting him, someone hits my Eved, so the din is that I will get it, is what we're saying. So Chava Be'Rabbi Gufe Yoiv Le'Udidei. Why should he have to give anything if, in fact, we're saying if the guy got hit, if the Eved got hit, so the Rav gets it. So if the Rav does the hitting, what does that mean? He's basically, essentially, be giving it to himself. So when it says Dilma Kamandiyama Enu Sarach, maybe this is actually in accordance of the opinion of Enu Sarach, that namely, that really there isn't an obligation to have to write this star. This sign to be Kulan Eved Yaitz Behen L'Cheres. And when it comes to an Eved, you have him go free. But Sarach get Shichur Maraboi Div Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel is of the opinion that you still need to write a get Shichur. Meir Omer Einot Sarach, you can have him go free even without a get Shichur. So Rabbi Lezer Omer Sarach, Rav Tarfon Omer Einot Sarach, Rabbi Kiba Omer Sarach, Hamachriin Lefnei Chachamim, Hamachriin Lefnei Chachamim, Oimrim Nirin Ki Rav Tarfon. So they're somewhat of a compromise. A hold like the Shita of Rav Tarfon that says you don't need it. B'shem b'ayin. However, Torah zichsaloi. The Torah itself says he goes free by shem b'ayin. So therefore, you don't need to get shecher. But Div Rabbi Kiva b'shari varim hoyel kanas l'chamim hu. However, when it comes to all the other avarim, which is brought down in Kiddushin, there's 24 Rashi avarim. So then the din is that you would have to write a get shecher. because it's kanas chachamim. Kanas, what do you mean? How karoi kadarshina. There's psukim to tell us about the Rashi Avarim. El ema hoyel u'medrash chachamim, who says Taisus, I'm Rabbi Natan, the chayshin and shema yimsenu b'shuk. The whole notion is we be nervous. Maybe he'll go out into the shuk. V'yarmulo avdiata. People will still say he's my slave. If it's anyone else, they can say, what do you mean? Just go to the psukim and you can see that he's not your slave anymore. So that's the chiluk. So the question is, does he still need to get shichur? He may be still his eved, therefore he'll get the money for the eye since he's free even without a get. Okay. Fine. Let's look at question. So we look in Rashi over here. Yeshul Kanas Shlishim Shkom Rabo Im Nokhu Shor. Okay, so let's look at question 1 now. Shor Hamuid Shehemus. Shor Hamuid kills a half eved. Madino in Kaifer in Shlishim Shel Eved. What is the din of Kaifer? So the din is Noisin Chatzi Kaifer Yarshim. Half of the kaifer, as we said on the top, does go to the eved's relatives. However, regarding kanas, and it says over here in brackets, Lamishna Shaina Nais and Chatze Kanas Arabo, half goes to the master. Lamishna Achrona Talia Be'iboya Im Mu'ukav Get Shecher. If you didn't give him a get shecher, Yeshul Kanas, will he still get kanas? V'lo ifshate. So the whole question is, even if you freed him, or he was partially free, you freed him. Again, it's based on the Mishnah Rishayna, or the Mishnah Acharayna, where he's basically has to be freed. Whether or not then a get shichur is necessary. So therefore, because of that, it will be questionable whether or not the Rav will get the kanas. Iboilhu. Mu'ukav get shichur. Again, if he didn't give the get shichur to the Eved, oichel b'truma eno oichel. So he's still allowed to eat truma or not. Kinyan kasma marchmana v'haylav kinyan kasmahu. He's not a kinyan kasma since he doesn't own him anymore. Well, dilma kivan the mechoser get shichur, since you didn't give him this document, kinyan kasma kirin bay. We still will call it kinyan kasma. Tashma. Diamara misharshia kohenes shinis arev vlada bivlad shilchata. If you have a woman kohen who had mixed up her child with the child of a maidservant, the din is that they can still eat eat truma if it's an eved kohen. And they'll divide up one portion in the gorim. So higdilu, once this child got mixed up, grows up, hataruvos meshachron zedzeh. Those who got mixed up should free one another. So l'chayra, that should be a raya that they could still eat truma. The hachash hasam im yavoliyahu v'yemar b'chad menayu de eved who kinin kasba krin bay. If Eliyahu Navi would come and explain who actually is the right person, we listen to him. Hachalav kinin kasba hu klal. But over here, there's no kinyan kasba because he was already freed. You just didn't write the shtar. And therefore, because of that, we're going to leave with this question whether or not it actually, the din is whether he can eat truma at that point. Question 2. Hipul es shina. You knocked out the Eved Kanani's tooth. We're going to stop there. Vasima es eno. And then you blinded him. So ha'im chayav. Does he have to pay for the value of the eye? So according to if you didn't need to write a get shecher, you knocked out his tooth, so he's free. Therefore, Misham to me, Eino kiben chayrin. You have to pay for his eye, just like any other free person. But if you in fact do need to have written, you didn't do it yet, so Tayyib boya to machlokas ima ukav get shecher yeshel kanas lo ifshita. The whole notion of whether or not it will work in the event over where the who would get the kanas. Okay. Question TA 10. Shor shenagach mi shechatzi v'chatzi ben chayrin mi mekabel satashlumin. It's pretty much the same question we had before. So when it comes to Kalia Karna, Nois and Chatzi Eved v'Chatzi Rabo, below Kalia, for example, that his hand got healed again, Yom Shel Rabo Rabo, Yom Shel Atzmo Atzmo, then it depends on who it was, how he got killed, at what point. Was it when the day that he was working, or was it the day that he was not working? TA 10. Okay. So again, it was Talia. It's so fine. In a situation where he would get healed again, so it's Chatzi Kaiful Yarsha. However, okay, good. Let's see, maybe one more question. TB 10. Be'ez oifen mishkach l'chatzi ev l'chatzi ben necharin alibed de kuliyama. So I guess we had this already. Eved shel shnei shutvin. That was actually at the very top of, I guess we could call it today's daf, but that was really yesterday's daf. TB 10. Okay. So that was Membez Amid Aleph. Masfar de Eved L'Kanas Adif Miperis Dekel Adkan.